Well, welcome to the 2014 Convocation presentation for College of the Sequoias. Thank you all so much for being here and for sharing some of your time with us this morning. For those of you who I haven't had the privilege to meet, I'm Stan Carasosa, Superintendent President with College of the Sequoias, and on behalf of our board and senior management and administration, it's a pleasure to welcome us all here this morning. I'd like to start with some introductions. As always, we appreciate the work that our Board of Trustees does, and many of them have prior commitments. It's the end of the summer and they're with their families for last-minute vacations, but nonetheless, some have been able to be here, and I'd like to acknowledge our Board of Trustees this morning. Unable to be here is Lori Cardoza. She's the President of our College of the Sequoias Board of Trustees. I'd also like to introduce the Vice President of our Board of Trustees, Mr. John Zumwalt, and John is here this morning. John? I'd like to acknowledge the Clerk of our Board, Earl Mann. Earl seldom misses, so my hunch is we'll see him walking in here in a moment after he's found a place to park. Board members Greg Sherman and board members Ken Nunes, and I very much appreciate the work of our board and the support that they give us. I do want to thank them. I hope that you noticed as you were coming in, we were scrolling the pictures, I think pretty glamorous photos actually, of our new hires this year. It's been a great year for College of the Sequoias in terms of being able to hire back faculty positions that were lost during the recession and an opportunity to replace key administrative and classified positions. So we're very pleased to welcome this morning all of the new staff to College of the Sequoias. So let's give them a round of applause. As you all know, this type of event takes a few people really putting things together behind the scenes, and I would first like to thank the folks who help us every year get the theater ready and take care of the technical things. And of course, we all know and appreciate the work of Steve Lamar, Nick Terry, Terry Gray, and Kevin McCusker. Let's thank them. And as you were coming in and receiving a copy of the agenda and the handout for this morning's presentation, and they'll be there to collect your input if you decide to write things down and provide it for us at the end of this morning's session. I'd like to acknowledge Conti C., Mary Gonzalez, Linda Jones, Megan Tears, Karen Pauls, Annette Giegel, and Pat Christensen. Let's thank those folks. Okay, as we get started this morning, I think the email that went out to talk to you about this morning's presentation outlined the broad topics that we intend to cover this morning. So we're going to try to stick to those. I'm also excited this year to be incorporating and introducing a team of faculty who will be up here in a few minutes, actually taking us through some of the most important parts of this morning's presentation. So we've dispensed with our welcome and introductions. I do think it's important to remind all of us that there are some folks who, while some of us may have been out on a little break for the summer or scheduled some vacation time, there's some important work that goes on during the summer. You know that we were successful in expanding our summer school this year. For maintenance, grounds, and operations, summer is kind of like agriculture. It's peak season to take care of a lot of things that have to get done while the college is not in full operation. There's been support staff working diligently all summer. And of course, our faculty who have been here both to teach summer school and to provide additional work and support for the college. I wanted to offer a thank you to all the hard work for the summer. Okay, a couple of big items that we like to touch on each year. This year, the 2014-15 state budget, I think for the first time in the last 5 years, has a glimpse of light and a ray of hope as California gradually works its way out of the recession. We are responding a little bit slower than other states in the country, but we are responding nonetheless. So the news out of Sacramento this year, compared to the last few times we've stood before you, is definitely a brighter note. There was an opportunity in this year's budget for a very small cost of living adjustment afforded by the state budget to community colleges, a little less than 1%, but it's helped cover those important costs of step and column movement and longevity increases that are just fixed expenses built into the budget. So as opposed to years when we had no COLA, even though this is small, it is very welcome. We have a new source of restricted funding this year called student access. For many of you who've worked closely with budgets before, this used to be called growth funding. We got funding for growing in enrollment or needing to grow and expand faculty positions for enrollment. It's now called student access. It used to be called growth. And the restricted funding that came in this budget this year is what enabled us to hire back the faculty members that we lost, the positions we lost toward our full-time obligation number during the recession. There's a new source of funding called student success. And this is what we used to refer to as matriculation. They're categorical dollars. They're provided to the college budget. They're now tied to those elements of the Student Success Act that were adopted in 2012. We're going to review a couple of those in a minute. But the point is, this used to be that matriculation funding that was in place and restricted for us to put in services and support to make sure that students met their matriculation and transfer goals. It's now called Student Success Funding. And student equity. Equity this year in the budget has a different definition than what equity has in the past. There's still an important element of equity on our campuses for all of our different race, gender, and ethnicity, and representation of students equally. This is really about equity of access and equity of achievement. So we refer to this little pot of money as being given to us by the legislature to close the achievement gap. So as we look at our student performance indicators, and as we look at the objectives we have set and the goals that we need to meet from the Chancellor's office, we're going to see some differences between different subgroups of students. And if we have achievement rates or completion rates or transfer rates for one subpopulation of our student body that are larger or higher than another subpopulation, we're going to have to take a look at that subpopulation that's performing lower and invest these dollars disproportionately in closing that achievement gap. And then finally, we're glad to have some scheduled maintenance funding back in the state budget. So when we provide our district match, we get the opportunity to leverage some state funds to take care of the ongoing needs of our buildings, roofs and floors and electrical and those kinds of things. So we're pleased to have some of that in this year's budget as well. So as the old saying goes, stop and smell the roses. We think this is a pretty good time for us to stop and look back at this last year and smell the sequoias. To stop and reflect a little bit on what this improved budget and the hard work we've all done over the last couple of years has enabled us to do. And so as you watch the Medals of Honor drop over our giant shoulders right there, we are really pleased this year that because of the passage of Proposition 30 a little over a year ago, the improving state economy, and the little bit of additional COLA and resources that you see in the bullets I just provided you, looks like for this year, for the first time in 5 years, we're going to be able to take a budget to the board that the annual budget, the structural budget of income in and expenses out in a single year is going to be balanced. That's the first time in 5 years. May not be a big deal to you guys, but it feels really good to be able to do that. Secondly, this ought to be a big deal. We're removed from show cause. That was an opportunity for us to pull together as a team, for faculty, for classified staff, for students, for board, and for community, to remind ourselves what College of the Sequoias means to this region. It wasn't a fun experience, y'all. It's still not that fun. But we are better for having been through that experience. At least from my perspective, I feel like, you know the old saying, that which does not kill us will only make us stronger. I think we've come through a stronger organization. In many ways now, we're a model for colleges who are placed on warning, who are placed on probation. Our phones are the ones that ring now, asking, how did College of the Sequoias as a team pull together to do such a fine job of addressing these show cause issues? And so we're really proud of that. And the key for that was us implementing what we call COS 2.0, our restart button, our refresh, our upgrade. And you're going to be reminded again with a few slides here of what 2.0 is and what it means to us. But we're really happy and pleased with how it's going so far, and there's still a lot of hard work to do. One of the things that's been an important goal for us, we had to put it on pause while we were addressing show cause, is that we have an important objective to achieve center status for our Hanford campus. Requires an extensive application process and a needs assessment. That's done, it's been completed. A lot of hard work by people in facilities and in enrollment, administrative services. Special recognition goes to Dr. Hollabaugh. Kristen worked hard on putting together the 257-page application. I told her it's the third most impressive document we've produced. The first two came out of show cause and accreditation. This was the third. And now we're on our way to our future. The 2015 through 25 next generation of our 10-year master plan is in the works. Hopefully you've heard about it. Hopefully you've had a chance to participate in it. We began the process by the formation of a task force last spring. We're following the protocols in our planning manual and in our governance manual for doing this, for accounting for it, and it's coming along very nicely. We're going to hear a little bit more about that from our faculty in just a moment. And what that master plan has done is it's allowed us to envision kind of what we're putting in our heads now, which is what's it going to look like when we're COS 2.1? What's our next version as we look out 10 years, as we respond to these state mandates, as we think about the role we play in the region? This master plan is going to have those big overarching goals that are going to guide that work for us. So if you settle into where we are right now, this hopefully is a familiar image for all of you. It's the organizational chart of our participatory governance system. It's worked very fine in its first full year of operation, but it's also now gone through its first full year of self-evaluation. So what's happening early this fall is we're taking all of the input we got from each of the components of that governance structure for improvement, and we're reviewing those through the structure itself. Governance Senate, Academic Senate, Student Senate, they will be recommending and approving the changes we make to the process and the manuals going forward. So it's a system that's starting to work now, and it's the foundation of a new culture that's been very positive for us. So when you look at all of that, you understand now that district senates are governing, and I think doing so very effectively. District committees are functioning. We've got protocols in place and records that are kept and archives on their website for them. And district councils are operating daily to take care of business. And on those top three right there, I think what's really impressive is the efficiency that we saw improving over the course of last year. And I'll use just one example because I've tried hard to attend almost every academic senate meeting that I could. And I think last year, toward the end of the year, there was a full agenda for Academic Senate, which normally goes from like 4 to 5:30 or something like that. And Dr. Trimble set a record. That meeting was over in like 29 minutes. And it wasn't because they skipped anything or didn't have a quorum. It's because they got through all the business. So it's starting to work, and we're starting to see the benefits of that. I think one of the biggest things we accomplished in 2.0 is we were able to establish that those processes to run the college can coexist in a really positive way alongside separate processes for employee advocacy, representation, and negotiations. And I know that that tends to be a tender subject with us, and I apologize if you don't want me to share this at the convocation, but I think it's too important. I think that the role that we all play in those two areas are critical to how we function well as a college. And you'll remember last year that I shared this slide, probably one that got pinned up around the water cooler and marked up around a few faculty meetings, and that's okay, because if you're talking about it, even if you're criticizing it, at least we're thinking about it. And what I was trying to share is that if we're two cars traveling in the same direction, and in one car we've got all of these important processes for running the college and maintaining our accreditation, and in another car, we've got these important processes for employee advocacy and representation. They can coexist. They don't need to be weapons of mass destruction. And I think we've been able to show that. I think we've been able to make those work. Last year, we resolved probably 6 or 7 pending grievances. And we used this process. There's a few more grievances we're working through. But it's been healthy and it's been non-adversarial. And the important point is both cars get to their destination. Right after we shared this slide in January, I think it was at our board meeting, our then PUSTA president, Lisa Greer, came to the board meeting, and she responded to this slide by sharing an alternative idea for us to think about. She says, you know, we used to all ride together. And she put up a little yellow school bus. It was an adorable bus, by the way. And she said, we used to all ride together in one bus. And I appreciated that Lisa felt confident in sharing those thoughts with us. My feeling about the two cars isn't that we're not riding together. It's that when we were all children getting in the school bus together, there was never any conflicting interest about where we were going or who was getting us there. And the reality in our world as a college organization and an administration is that from time to time, the interests of us as adults will collide a little bit with the interests of the institution as a college. And that's the reason you need to have two vehicles to travel. Because most importantly, nothing should be able to stop our ability to remain a fully accredited institution meeting the operational needs of our students. So I share that with you again just to re-emphasize. This year there's going to be stuff. You're going to hear about, we still have the CAP case pending at FERC. It's important that we share information about that. We now have the Costa case on the STRS retirement income. It's been in the newspaper. Many of you have emailed and said, answer questions for us. So we have to have a healthy way to talk about that so that it doesn't disrupt the work that we're doing as a college. Okay, moving on now to the next bigger component aside from governance, and that is the integrated planning model. And here are the key elements to that. You can see that we're working now on that 10-year plan. That's going to be the genesis for the next strategic plan, which is a shorter-term 3-year document. Institutional program review has now become our annual review of our divisions, departments, units. We have a nicely defined process in place that's transparent for requesting additional resources to support your action plans. We have an opportunity built in now systematically through structures like dialogue days and district-wide forums and district summits to talk about those action plans that we have put in place. And then we collect the data on them. And we take a look each year at whether what we set out to do was actually accomplished. And we put all of that together in a presentation to the board, and then we start that cycle over again. So this process of continuous improvement really defines COS 2.0. So how does that affect, how does our planning process actually affect what we have to do in compliance with the state? Well, I mentioned earlier the State Student Success Act of 2012. And here's primarily how it's going to impact College of the Sequoias. It's the centerpiece of the legislation. It's called the Student Success Scorecard. And I know that we've talked about this before, and many of you are aware of it. But here's a template of what it looks like. And this is College of the Sequoias front page when you get there, and it's basically our profile. This is just the demographics. But I urge you to look across at the bars on the top. We have to measure ourselves in terms of persistence, which is a fall-to-fall enrollment rate, 30-unit completion, which was determined through research to be a trigger, a catalyst for success when students complete 30 units, the actual completion rate, which is how many degrees did you award, remedial statistics, and when we think remediation, we often think how many students are passing our prerequisite skills classes. If we have students that need English 251, how many are passing 251? That's not how we're measuring remedial. The way we get measured in remedial is if we have students who passed 251, how many of them passed English 1, the course that follows the remedial class? So that's a statistic we're going to have to continue to work with. And then finally, career technical education and the completion of certificates. For those students whose SEP says, I'm coming here to be certified or to achieve this technical certificate, how many actually complete that? So that's the framework that drives our work now. And I reference it because you're going to see it when faculty share our master plan work. So here's how it's looking for us. That student success scorecard is driving two really big documents for us right now. we have to complete what's called the Student Success Support Plan. And remember when I showed you the budget, and I showed you that money that we're getting for student success that used to be matriculation? We only get that money now if we set our objectives in this plan and meet them. So suddenly, we're being tied, performance of the college, progress of the college is being tied to receiving our funding. The same thing is true of that equity plan. So there's a ton of work going on right now behind the scenes through administrative services, student services, academic services, and faculty to take a look at what those elements in those two plans should be so that we're not only achieving student success, but we're closing the gap under equity. We're closing the gap between those subgroups of our population that are underperforming and bringing them up to where the other performance populations are. All of that is really going to fill or feed the 2015 strategic plan, that first 3-year plan that we showed you as it popped up over there on our planning cycle coming up next year. Okay, so we're going to transition now to a quick update of where we are in our current status of COS 2.0. We have the ACCJC warning report due in October, so yes, we're off show cause. We're happy, we're excited, we're celebrating. However, don't forget, we still have items to respond to, and the response is going to be embedded in this warning report. We submit that in October. Lucky us, we get another ACCJC visit in November because they'll look at the warning report just like they looked at the show cause report. What we feel much better about now is we're operating our new systems and we're much less nervous about visitors coming to check what we're doing because we think we have it fairly well dialed in. The ACCJC will hold their regular twice-a-year meeting in January, just as they did in January of this year. And then in February, we'll receive our action letter, just as we received our action letter this year. So the next series of slides, I'm going to hand over to some of our faculty to share in presenting and reviewing to you. And I want to introduce them, and I'd like you to acknowledge the work that they've done, because we have had a strong team of faculty doing lots of stuff to really help us in this process. And certainly all of you have it as well, as they've been matriculating that process outward. First, and I'm not going to have this group come up on stage, not all of them, but I would like them to stand and just be recognized because they're known right now as our accreditation editing team. We have to have a team of people committed to taking a look at all of the documentation that comes through our governance process, putting it together, and making sure that it matches with all of the requirements that are in that warning report. So if you would stand, and I'm going to ask if you'll hold your applause because I do want to acknowledge them, but let me get them all standing and then I'd like to give them a round of applause. Our Vice President of Academic Services, who's also our Accreditation Liaison Officer. And I don't know if you're all aware of that, but we have to have an officially designated Accreditation Liaison Officer. And Dr. Lacerna serves in that role. She's also the co-chair of the Master Plan Task Force, of IPEC. I don't know, there's probably 2 or 3 other things she co-chairs. But I'd like to have Dr. Lacerna stand. I'd like to also introduce Dr. Dali Ozturk. He is our Director of Research and Institutional Planning and Effectiveness. And for those of us in years past who ever wondered whether or not the value of a strong researcher and research office was important to a community college, I just want to go out on a limb and tell you I think Dr. Ozturk has proved that to us. I'd like to introduce Dr. Kristen Hollowell, who's the provost for Hanford and is serving on that editing team. And not able to be with us this morning, but a really strong contributor is Christian Anderson. He's a professor of economics here at College of the Sequoias. And then the last 2 that I'd like to ask to stand, and I'd also like to ask them to start to make their way up because they're going to help in presenting some of the next slides, are Dr. Thea Trimble. She's our president of the Academic Senate, and Matt Beret, who is an instructor of math here at College of the Sequoias. But this is our editing team, and I'd like to acknowledge their hard work. The next faculty member or administrator who's going to help us a little bit with the presentation this morning is our Dean of Student Services. She also emerged last year as a star facilitator by helping us at the the last instructional summit put on by Academic Senate. She's going to give us an overview this morning of the goals and the objectives, and that's Dean Stephanie Collier. Stephanie, would you give her that? And these next four are members of the Master Plan Task Force and/or IPEC, Institutional Planning and Effectiveness. And our co-chair of the Master Plan Task Force and Social Science Division Chair is Carol Enns. Carol, please come up. English professor, Vice President of Academic Senate, co-chair of IPEC. I hope I'm not forgetting anything, Greg Turner. Our Division Chair for Science and member of IPEC, Dr. Jesse Wilcoxon. And Senior Instructional Specialist and Master Plan Task Force member, Kelly Diaz. All right, these folks are going to take a clicker from me and help move us through the next series of slides.
Good morning. I'm going to take you through a little history of what we've been doing with accreditation and where we're headed in the future. Our timeline actually began, for most of it being in our awareness, in 2012 when we had our comprehensive self-evaluation and visit. Just to think about this now, just a couple of years ago, how many people knew that the report was being written? How many people knew that people were going to come? How many people got interviewed during that time? I know I didn't, I was in the hospital. But I bet you all remember this. When we had our show cause report and visit last year, it was huge because it was the culmination of a tremendous amount of work. And right now I think you guys need to stand up and give yourselves a standing ovation. That's right, you have a good idea. I've had the privilege of going to the commission meeting when our show cause report was being discussed. And with the feedback from our visiting team and the commission, they were really impressed. Because understand, we got our action letter in February. So we didn't know till February what kind of trouble we were in. And yet, we had produced this by October. So with a summer in between where we can't get a lot done because there's not enough people here. They were really impressed. Which brings us to our warning report. Understand again, most people who go to show cause, they don't get all the way to warning. They have to go through probation and then warning. So this was huge. This was huge that we got all the way to warning. This is just one step below fully accredited. The warning report is complete. It's going to the editors. It's going to be available for you to look at. It will also be going through the governance processes for review and approval to the board in October. And again, we can expect a visit. I think that one of the things that was people were really impressed about is how knowledgeable everybody was about our new processes. And in this warning report, what we're showing is that we're working our processes. And if they're not right, if they're not working, we're going through the process to change them. It's okay to change, but we have to do that with the process. Well, as Stan said, eventually they're going to make a decision on that. But even regardless of what it is, we have yet another report next year, which is everyone has to do, which is a midterm report. In this report, we're going to primarily be working on what are called our actionable improvement plans. These are things we identified as a deficiency that we knew that we had to work on. So we have 18 of those. And most of them are just to make sure that we fully implemented our processes and that we're holding ourselves accountable. But we will have to submit a report. We may also have to address anything else they want us to address out of our warning report. So they could say, we want to still hear about your evaluations or other things. And just to make life really interesting, the next year, New standards, new eligibility requirements. Now, good news, many of them are exactly the same. Good news, your comprehensive reports don't have to come every 6 years. Is it going to go to 7 or 8? 7 years, so we have a little bit more in between, so that's good news. Bad news, there's whole new sections. So there's whole new sections. There's new eligibility requirements. So it's going to require that the college review these in order to make sure our processes and our activities are supporting those standards. One of the issues we've always had, and frankly, most colleges have, having been on accreditation site visits, most colleges do this, is they wait till the last year and a half before the comprehensive report, and then they think, oh my God, we have to write a comprehensive report. What are those standards again? How are we doing this? Oh yeah, okay, we better change that, we better change that. It's remarkable sometimes when you look at their minutes, how you can see, they literally say in their minutes, so-and-so made a report that we're not doing this, we need to change this so it'll show an accreditation. If we don't want this to be a big Megillah, every 7 years, we need to learn these and institutionalize them. Make them a part of our everyday activities so that it's not a lot of extra work. I mean, that's the issue. We don't want any more extra work. And then eventually, with these new standards, we're going to have to write a new comprehensive self-evaluation in fall 2018. And again, we'll have a visit at that point. So that's where we've been and where we're going. And right now, for our warning report, we have 3 recommendations that we're addressing. The first is planning. And this was, we had a similar recommendation for the show cause report. This is a slightly different new recommendation about planning. And what we have to recognize is that in 2012, we didn't have formal planning. It isn't that we didn't have planning, but we didn't have formal planning, and it certainly wasn't integrated. We had planning silos in different areas, but they didn't talk to each other. But after all the work, hard work that the district did last year, we now have a model for integrated planning. And we have initiated that model, and we're working that model, and you're going to hear more about it as we go forward this morning. And what we're going to have to start doing in this school year is evaluating how well that model is working. Because if it isn't working for us, we need to change it. And just to give you an idea of how far we've come in only a year, this is like one of my favorite slides. Before we got the show cause letter, Dr. Lacerna called a summit for 2 Fridays, and we got together committees who were doing planning. So, Institutional Planning Committee, Program Review Committee, Instructional Council, Academic Senate Exec. And we all got together, and we were given a list of committees, and we said, okay, now draw arrows to who you think is involved and who talks to whom. And then Christian took that all, and he and a student developed this. This is how he thought our planning went. This is from the people who were involved in our planning. This is what they thought. You may not recognize this, but if you look really carefully, College Council isn't even on there. And Academic Senate, integral in actual doing the planning, it was very odd, very odd. Eli, the size of the boxes, by the way, indicate how often they were noticed. So Eli, according to that group, had more input on planning than did management or facilities. So, pretty skewed. And now, this is our new integrated planning model, which everybody has seen over and over again. Christian pointed out to me, which I had forgotten, is that this model, the basis of this model actually came out of that same summit group. We took boxes after we got back together and saw that horrible slide before and said, how would it work better? And it was very similar to what we ended up with. So we need to keep working our processes. We need to keep showing sustainability. That's going to be key.
All right, next I get to talk about recommendation 3, And the first question that might pop into your head is what happened to recommendation 2? Well, when we went from show cause to warning, we went from having 7 recommendations down to 3, and they kept the numbering from the original. So we have recommendations 1, 3, and 7 left to work on. And recommendation 3 was on research capacity. In 2012, we basically had one person trying to collect and get out all of the data for the college. And it just wasn't enough. We didn't have the capacity to meet all the data needs of the campus. We were placed on show cause, and in 2013 we started developing manuals, and a key part of those manuals was using data to drive decision-making and planning. And so one of the actions that we took at the end of the spring semester in 2013 is we hired a director of research. And worked with that new director, under the guidance of that new director, the office started to evolve. And when the team came to visit at the end of 2013, we had made great strides in using data to drive decision making, but according to them, not quite enough yet. They still wanted to see a little bit more, and that's why this recommendation showed up again when they gave us warning. Well, we've now continued that process, and we're using data to make a lot of decisions in our planning and decision making on campus. We used data in the last semester to set standards, a new requirement from the ACCJC. We're using data to drive the planning for the master plan. We need to use data in the next year to revise the mission, to create the strategic plan, and to create program reviews. So we're still working with increasing the size of the data capacity on campus. The research office has also put together some other tools to help with that. We've got a solutions and innovations work group that meets on a regular basis to kind of brainstorm ideas for how data can be used better and how we can get higher quality data out to everybody that needs it on campus. The other recommendation that we have left, there it is, is recommendation 7, which is our evaluation of processes. In 2012, if you were on a committee, a senate, a council, when you got to the end of the year, you kind of said, okay, we're going to hang up our hats for the summer, we're going to come back in August and we'll pick things up. We had no systematic evaluation in place. We all kind of would talk about what needed to be done, but we didn't have a formal system in place. In 2013, after we were shocked by that show cause letter, right, we started working on the manuals. We created the manuals for planning and decision making and governance, and we started living by those manuals. But again, by the time that the visiting team got here towards the end of 2013, we just hadn't had enough time to go through an entire cycle, evaluate what we had done, and start making adjustments to it. Well, now in 2014, we have. Right? At the end of the spring semester, all of the committees, all of the senates, all of the councils did an evaluation. A similar evaluation in all of them. Right? The information from that is being compiled by the research office, and it's being used to make adjustments in how the governance structure at COS works. Different people are tweaking things in different ways, but we're trying to make things better overall. It's going to be an ongoing and continual process. Right? One thing that we're going to need to definitely work on is how kind of program reviews work together with above-based resource allocation. Right? Those two systems need to work together, and it's something that we're just kind of starting to work out. And it's going to require more revision in the upcoming years. And hopefully it gets easier. Another thing that we're going to need to evaluate in the kind of right now is the warning report. Right? A link to the document is going to become available either today or on Monday so that everybody can have access to it, everybody can read it. And if you read through that document and you find any mistakes, Any errors of omission or errors of fact, right, we need to know so that we can make a better document. Right? So that when we turn that in, when we turn in that warning report to the ACCJC, they're as impressed with that as they were with the show cause report we turned in a year before. So you can get any comments or feedback you have to our accreditation liaison officer, Jennifer Lacerna, or any member of the editing team. So please, in the next few weeks, look at it and give your feedback.
Good morning. So I was asked to talk about the 3 beginning components after the mission in our new planning model. As a lot of us know from our work over the last 2 years, we had a master plan and a strategic plan in place, but they were old and we kind of stuck them in there. And so what we're doing is, this is the year where we start to create new documents so that they work in our modeling. The master plan is, oh, it's going to start showing. I only have to push the button once. Yay. The master plan got started last year, and just so that everybody, especially if you're new, understands our new language, because we used to use the same words for everything. Right, we had 87,000 committees and goals and objectives. So what we have now is in our 10-year master plan, which I got to thinking about 10 years ago. It was my very first convocation. I was sitting up there mostly asleep because I just rolled in the night before from teaching in Washington State. And I got to thinking, like, I don't even think I knew there existed a master plan. And now we all know that this master plan exists, and we're all going to be part of it and be able to read it and know how it works and why we have it. And in that master plan, we have the district goals. So remember, goals are these long-term big ideas. They're not down in the blades of grass. They're the things that the community wants to know. What do you do at COS? What's your purpose? And so you can share those goals with them. And today we're going to be introduced to what the goals are for our 2015-2025 district master plan are going to be, and they're great. And if you came to the summit, you already had a little teaser of them. We're also, once the master plan gets finished up and gets adopted by the board in January of 2015, then the new cycle for the 3-year strategic plan comes into place. And in the strategic plan, this is where we have our district objectives. So goals, long, big ideas. District objectives are measurable. There are 3-year things, and again, they kind of get a little bit lower in terms of our down more deep into what we do here at the college. And those will get looked at every year in, as you can see, is there a button? I don't turn it off.
No, you'll switch slides.
I don't do it. Okay, I'm not touching the button. Not touching it, I'm touching it. So in the annual college report on the master plan. And then even lower down into our daily work. If you're a faculty member, if you're a staff working in an office, our daily work, one-on-one with the students and how we're measuring, how we're doing is our planned actions, and those are going to show up in our annual, I'm totally blanking out on what we call them. Annual, what is it? Oh, program review, there we go. Not something you should forget to know. And so that's the program review. So just to kind of keep in mind, goals, that's what we're going to be introduced to here in just a few minutes. Our objectives, those again will start, we had them all last year, we will have those this year as well, our 8 district objectives. And but starting next year, they will not be morphed and modified to meet our long-range goals, and then we have our daily actions in our program review. And now it's great.
Should have been there. There we go. I'm going to try to make it relatively quick because we're getting short on time and we still need to go through the goals, which are probably the more important thing. My goal really is to stop and smell the sequoias as far as the master plan goes, so to speak. Everybody hold up the sheet. Hey, we're still awake. This is where you're going to find some of the references I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to go into detail on them. The first thing I want to talk about is the Master Plan Task Force. You've already heard a lot about that. On your paper, you will find a list of the various constituencies from which the Master Plan Task Force came from. So you can look there. That list is important for you to hang on to. If you have any feedback that you'd like to give, you can send them to your representatives on the Master Plan Task Force. The second thing that I want to talk about is how we came up with the challenges and the goals. Last semester, a group of us met, which included Dean's Council, Academic Senate, Exec Board, the Master Plan Task Force, and a few other individuals came together, analyzed data, collected and analyzed the data, and came up with the challenges for the district, as well as some initial goals for the district. And some of these you've seen, they've since been revised. Also, last semester, Dr. Conrad came and interviewed for over several days. Every division talked about efficiency and success rates, and deans are still working with their areas to get their 10-year tasks down to address deficiencies within those areas. Also, last semester we had several forums on the master plan. I hope that many of you made those. And I think our most important and successful master plan endeavor was the Master Plan Summit, where we had community members as well as faculty and staff. We've got feedback from that, and some of that was used over the summer to actually make revisions. So I think that was very fruitful, and I hope we do more things like that. We've also done several drafts on each chapter, probably 2 to 3 drafts on each one. Even over the summer, a lot of revision work was done over the summer. A lot of feedback was given by the end of last semester, and people worked on chapters over the summer. And then within the past several weeks, members of IPEC and the Master Plan Task Force were asked to provide feedback to those chapters. I'm not sure how many did. I did. So they've gotten more feedback, so there should be even new drafts coming out if they're not already done. Again, we have one other thing for you. Where can you find master plan drafts on Master Plan? Anybody? In the bunker? I thought I heard bunker. Maybe the old ones are in the bunker. On the website. Where can you find? You have to get there.
And on there.
What should you do? Yes, it is in the accreditation section. So I encourage everyone to look at the latest drafts as they roll out. They will be updated on the master plan website. And again, if you forget the members, are on there. Those are all listed there. But you'll be able to see the successive drafts for each chapter. And I encourage everyone to look and provide feedback to the representatives on the master plan task force. And with that, I will turn it over to Bill.
All righty, lift your pens. That's the next step. Everybody got a pen and a paper. If you look at the bottom of the paper on the back side, you'll see that there are 2 questions. So as we have our faculty representative, our adjunct faculty representative, our classified staff representative, and our board and our community all participated in the summit to put input for the goals based on the challenges and the data that we reviewed. And we want to show you what goals we came up with and how we revised them, and we even added an additional goal. So as a result of the summit in May, we started with 3 goals. We ended up with 4, and we have the revision. And you can review all the documents online. If you look at the bottom of your paper on the back, you'll see the 2 questions you want to be thinking about as you listen to the presentation. And basically what you're going to be looking at are, do the challenges
Based on the challenges came from the data, and the question is, will our goals address the challenges? And does it fit? Is there anything missing? Do they need some fine tuning? And that's the first question on the bottom of your handout. And the second question would be anything else you might want to ask about or any comments you might have. If you want us to call you personally, you can put your name and we'll give you a call. And you can then drop these pieces of paper off at the door where some wonderful colleagues of ours are going to be collecting these surveys. If you'd rather think about it like I like to do as a philosopher, it takes me a week or so to get my thoughts really out there. You can hand it in to anybody that's on the master plan task force, and everyone is on the front side of the paper. And if you're worried about losing your paper when you go out the door, you've already been mailed, I believe, this handout, so you've got it online as well. All right, you've got your assignment, and you got everybody's input. Everybody volunteered on that Saturday event. We got 80 participants, and now we're inviting everybody that's here today to participate, and we'll have Jesse and Kelly present our goals and revisions.
Good morning. I'm not going to take a lot of time to go over all the data that was used to develop the challenges and goals, but I will just quickly summarize a couple of key bits of data that were used to develop at least challenge number one and goal number one. So for Kings County, there was a projected increase in the population of approximately 35% between 2010 and 2030. For Tulare County, that during that same period of time, the projected increase in population is going to be approximately 42%, and for the state of California, it's roughly 19%. So with that in mind, and also considering the fact that COS served approximately 21% fewer students between 2009 and 2013, this was some of the key bits of information that was used to develop the challenge, or at least challenge number one. In addition, we also have the Tulare and Hanford sites, which are now online and functioning at full capacity. And also, the economists project that there will be an increase in employment opportunities for individuals with post-secondary education. So again, keeping all this in mind, the challenge, or the first challenge, which again is on the back of the master plan task force handout that we have, is simply that COS must accommodate the anticipated increase in student demand. So to help address the challenge, this is the goal that was developed. So before I go too much further, I just want to point out that the portion of goal number one, which is actually underlined, is a result of the feedback which was gathered from the master plan summit. So this is, again, this is our latest version of goal number one, but keep in mind it's a work in progress, and any feedback that you all provide may help further modify the goal. So again, the goal is simply for COS to increase student enrollment, relative population growth, and educational and workforce development needs. And we have the next one.
Good morning, everybody. So I'll briefly introduce goal number 2 and goal number 3 as well. Goal number 2 states that the district would like to increase the rate at which our students are completing an educational goal while they are here. So that could be anything from completing certificate requirements, completing transfer requirements to move on to a four-year institution or other institution, or completing a degree here. Some of the data that was considered here, one of the challenges really for us is that between 70 to 80% of our students come into COS unprepared for transfer level courses. So that is, they place into a math or English course that is below transfer level. So of those students that place there, only about 38%, I think in the last cohort that was looked at, across a 6-year period, end up completing one of those goals. And that is lower than what we observe across the state with unprepared students. The prepared students is more equal to what is observed across the state. About 70% of students who are prepared are completing one of those goals, transfer requirements, certificate requirements, or degree requirements. But still, this goal states that we would like to increase that rate for all students at COS. And then district goal number 3 is based on, again, a lot of data, but I'll just point out a couple of points that were made in the drafting of this goal. One piece of evidence that was found is that 71% of our students are actually first-generation college students. So they're coming to us as the first in their family to take on the challenges of college, to understand the process of being in the community college system. And, you know, that presents to us something that we have to consider as we develop our programs and our services. And so really this goal speaks to our efforts to remain aware of the unique characteristics of our population and the larger community that we serve. Another fact for our area, 40 to 50% of residents here speak a language other than English at home. So that's something that's unique to our area and to the students that we serve as well. There was one other thing I was going to say for this one, but I can't remember what it was. About 25% of our population live in poverty as well. So you can see how these challenges could impact what our students need here at COS. The underlined portion here is something that was added following feedback from the Master Plan Summit. So that is that not only are we going to take into consideration the population characteristics, what our students need because of their backgrounds or what they're coming to us, the experience they're coming to us with, but also that we'll consider the workforce demands, changes in what the employment needs are in our community, too.
Okay. It's hard to get up and talk before the whole group and do some extra planning and preparation. And all of our faculty did that this morning, so could we thank them one more time? Okay, I get the privilege of sharing goal number 4. And the reason for this, if you remember when Carol spoke, she talked about how critical the summit became in this master plan process. And goal number 4 actually is an entire new goal. You're going to see it, and the whole thing is underlined. Because it came, the source of data, the source of input and information that drove this goal was the academic master plan summit. And as you looked at all of the 3 goals that we just presented, appropriately so, you notice that they're recognized on, they're related to and focused on student achievement, that they're aligned with those larger statewide issues that we saw outlined in student success, but then also tailored to meet the specific needs of our region. And what we learned as we got together in the summit is that because we've come through such a significant transformation as an institution, that we didn't have a goal that expected anything different or ongoing from us. And because COS 2.0 has been the important basis for the change of culture, this goal was born. And it's about our responsibility, the institution, the faculty, the administration, the staff, the people who make the institution work, to continue our commitment to assessing ourselves and our operational processes for the purpose of continually providing improvement in the outcomes we need for students. So I think this was a valuable representation of how effective the planning process has been so far, and the actual participation at the summit is that chemistry of the 80 to 100 people who were there really developed the idea that this important concept was missing, so this goal is now before you for your review, input, and consideration. So that rounds out the 4 goals as Stephanie described them, those 30,000-foot broad-based goals that will drive the shorter-term strategic planning for the next 10 years. And we feel good about the fact so far that they're aligned to the state goals and objectives and those expectations we have as part of the statewide and national community college program. At this point, we're going to start to close our presentation now, and I'd like to make one additional introduction because I noticed that one of our board members did arrive, and I'd like to make sure that we acknowledge the fact that he took the time to come. And I see Board Member Ken Nunes here this morning, and I wanted to thank you, Ken, for coming. And then the other thing that I had wanted to do, kind of embed this in the middle of our ceremony this morning, is I don't know if all of you are aware, I assume that you are, but we wanted to dedicate this morning's ceremony and commemorate this morning's opening convocation in memory of Jimmy Hoyt. Jimmy was the College of the Sequoias farm technician for us for the last 3 years. Earlier in the month of July, we had a very unfortunate and tragic accident on the farm where Jimmy lost his life. And we've worked very closely with his family, his wife Leslie, his son Ethan, his mom and dad. And I would like to just ask that we honor Jimmy and his work here at College of the Sequoias with just a brief moment of silence as we prepare to close this morning's ceremony. Thank you. So now, interpreters, get ready to go fast. Because I need to close us before you guys wad those up and start throwing them at me. COS 2.0, you see the evidence of this around our campus. You've heard this morning the progress that we're making on it. We're really proud of how sophisticated we've become in organizing processes that we believe are good for the institution. They're here to withstand the test of time. The idea about these processes and this commitment is that we build structures and systems and protocols that are bigger than any academic senate, any administration, any faculty, any president, so that as you become a part of College of the Sequoias, you adopt this culture and this way of thinking and working, and we have that long-term consistency to give our institution strength. How has it worked for us so far? I just want to run through a flurry really quick of some super things that were accomplished last year. And I apologize if there's something fantastic that you feel should have been up here because it's impossible to make an all-inclusive list. But you might be asking yourself, okay, we've done a lot of hard work, but what's the result of that? And it's too early to tell specifically, but here are some really good indicators that are popping out. Last year, we awarded 1,194 degrees or certificates. We graduated 52 registered nurses, 25 certificated firefighters, 96 new police officers, 25 physical therapists, and College of the Sequoias Foundation supported us in facilitating $250,000 in scholarships. To show that we're a complete institution for all of those other things related to the core academic program, we were CVC, Central Valley Conference eligible for a bowl in football. We had a state finalist from our Giants team in the women's cross country. We had playoff berths in men's and women's basketball. We had championships for the conference in swimming and diving, championships in men's track and field. We were in the playoffs for our women's softball program. We had Central Valley Conference championships in men's baseball, and College of the Sequoias men's baseball team was one of the final four in the state of California. We had a nationally honored musical theater production last year. Our ongoing success in our choral program. We had national recognition in science, technology, engineering, and math. We had another Jack Kent Cook Scholar recipient. We increased the transfers to the University of California institutions over previous years. And our graduation ceremony had one of the largest attendances ever, graduates who actually took the time to come back and be a part of the ceremony, which is one of those things that tells us about that sense of belonging and connectedness to this institution. 528 graduates. We had to do riot prevention on the field. But it was a good problem to have. So I throw a few statistics in there to close today's ceremony so that we walk out feeling like, man, all of this hard work means something. And College of the Sequoias is a central part of this region. We're part of the economic engine. We're part of improving the quality of living in our students for their lifetime. And remember what those statistics show. If you increase your education, if you get that community college degree or that 4-year college degree over the course of your working lifetime, from age 26 to about 65, you're going to earn $1.2 million more in salary than you would without that education. All of that contributes. And because our area is in such need of this education, our work here is more than education. It's more than an institution. This is our mission. For me, in my heart, this is our ministry. Because we're lifting this demographic into a level of quality of living that wouldn't exist without us. And that's what makes me feel really good about being part of College of the Sequoias. Now I'm going to close with a quick reminder that last year I picked a famous saying from an incredible head coach out of the National Football League who was part of my favorite team. I was born in Norristown, Pennsylvania, and I told you guys what a diehard Pittsburgh Steelers fan I was. And this is qualitative evidence, okay, Dolly? This is not quantitative data. It's just my belief. But by mentioning that team, by bringing the Steelers up at the close of Convocation, we have the worst season ever. And so I am not going to bring up the Steelers again. In the event that that might be true, there may be other teams. I'm not trying to jinx anybody. Not trying to cause any trouble here. Okay, the truth is, I'm not superstitious at all. Where's Coach Peggy? You here, Coach? You know why we tanked the Steelers? Our offensive line took a dive about the 4th game of the year, and with no O-line, you're not going to win. And so it had nothing to do with me mentioning them at Convocation. I believe these two teams are going to be fabulous. But just so we don't leave with any controversy, let's all celebrate one team we know we can all get behind and support. Whether it's our Giants in the fall season and this football team or any other of the number of men's and women's teams that we send out to represent College of the Sequoias, we're proud to be part of this institution. I'm honored and privileged. I give thanks every day to be your president and superintendent. With that, I wish you all a fantastic year. We are adjourned. Thank you.